Distinguished guests, my name is Ivar Stokkereit and I'm the acting ombudsperson for children in Norway. It's an honor for me to be invited to address you all at this event and exhibition in Santiago in Chile. Although I'm speaking to you from the far north, the reason why we're all together is the experiences that we see are universal and a part of a common history that children in many countries around the world share. For us, it is therefore important that we remember our history in order to avoid it from repeating itself. And the exhibition that you have before you today is a powerful reminder to all of us in a not too distant past, where children were looked upon as objects and the belonging of adults, deprived from individual rights. The institution that I represent, and that you also have fairly recently established in Chile as well, is one of the key guarantees we have to make sure that children in fragile situations are better protected. The Ombudsperson for Children in Norway was established all the way back in 1981 as the first ombudsperson for children in the world. Since then, the Ombudsperson for Children arrangement have spread around the world. The spokesperson for children and their rights, with a unique mandate to protect and promote the rights of children in a country, is vital in order to secure that children and their perspective is not overlooked, as it has been and still are in many aspects of life. The history of the establishment of the Ombudsperson for Children comes in many different versions. In Norway, the establishment of Children's Ombudsperson was largely government-driven, and consultations were held with civil society organizations, and final discussions occurred with Parliament, leading to a parliamentary vote to create the institution. The idea of creating an ombudsperson for children first emerged in Norway from the academic world all the way back in 1969, in a paper by a Norwegian professor of law. The rationale that he was providing was that we needed to provide children with an official voice to defend their rights. And in the mid-1970s, a member of the women's organization of the Norwegian Labour Party took up the idea, securing its insertion into the organization's program on the position of children in contemporary society. Between 1975 and 1979, the government discussed various committees to review and discuss the proposal. And the UN's International Year of the Child in 1979 gave the state an incentive to review all its child-related policies. Debates in the committees progressively shaped the mandate of the Ombudsperson. But non-governmental organizations also played a role, expressing a diversity of often conflicting views, especially in relation to possible effects on parental authority. But then in August 1980, the Ministry of Consumer Affairs and Government Administration proposed the bill to create an ombudsman for children to Parliament. The bill was adopted in February 1981. The debate in the Parliament was highly polarized, primarily because of diverse understanding of children's rights. Members of Parliament voted along their party lines, and the bill was adopted by a very small majority. The Ombudsman institution in Norway is still working along the same lines as we did back in 1981. The only difference is the reference to the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child and the mandate we have to oversee the implementation of this treaty. In 2003, the Convention on the Rights of the Child were implemented into Norwegian legislation. This fast-tracked a lot of child rights-related changes in different laws and regulations in Norway. As a result of the implementation, we experienced that the principle of the best interests of the child and child participation was included in all relevant child protection legislation, creating a new legislative frame for the child protection services. Not only protecting the child, but making sure that the principle of the best interests of the child was a primary consideration in all action taken towards a child. Other legislative incorporation processes then followed to integrate the CRC into all relevant sector law. But Norway has still opposed to ratify the third optional protocol on complex procedures and ensuring children a system where they can complain on rights violation domestically. So even with a proud history for children's rights, there is work to be done to ensure full implementation of children's fundamental rights and also to accept children as rights holders. And although much has been done in order to promote the principle of the best interests of the child, both in legislation and in administrative and court proceedings, there is still a lot of work to be done. During the COVID pandemic, we experienced how fragile these considerations are, in particular when the best interests of the child are in conflict with adults. Schools, kindergartens, and leisure time activities for children were closed down with little or none consideration on how this would affect children in a long term, both individually but also as a group. The long-term effects that the close down of the society has had on children is now starting to emerge. And just last month, a new scientific paper was out here in Norway looking at the effect that homeschooling have had on secondary school pupils. Our experience is that we have a tendency to forget a child risk analysis before we enter into legislative reforms or social reforms. And although the outspoken outcome is to improve the living for children, a lack of consideration and fact-finding on the potential negative outcomes rarely finds its way to the decision makers. This constitutes a challenge in ensuring that we actually know what's in the best interests of children when we do reforms. The COVID pandemic and the measurement taken into place to reduce contamination being a very good example of this. The story behind the exhibition before you today is also a story of child neglect, discrimination, and denying children their fundamental rights. A Norwegian public inquiry published in 2005 an examination of child neglect, abuse, and mistreatment in Norwegian orphanage and special schools dating in the period from 1945 to 1980. This is also a story of how lack of qualified staff, underfinanced and understaffed institutions with a lack of supervision left many hundred children in situations of violence and abuse. The story of Chile is not unique and is shared by many other countries. By understanding how, we might also create an understanding of how to avoid this from happening again, by using the general principles of the Convention on the Rights of the Child and by empowering children themselves with the tools to let them make sure that their own rights are respected. We can create a future where their best interest is at the forefront. The starting point that the Convention on the Rights of the Child provides us is one where decision makers use the child rights approach to better shape the future of their children. I wish you all the best for the debate that you will have later on, and I hope that all of you will use this exhibition to learn more about a not too distant past, and again to make sure that we treat children better in the future. Thank you very much.